You ever watch Charm?
I'd like to call to order the workshop for the Mayor and City Council for the month of December and ask Councilman Vigliotti to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. It's good to have you here this evening on this chilly December evening. Merry Christmas, almost.
Amen.
And with that said, I'd like to kind of make a few opening remarks. One has to do with the Christmas decorations that were not, but are now. There were some issues concerning permission from Potomac Edison to allow the decorations to be on our poles this year. They had plans to run some fiber optic lines, and they felt that the reefs would interfere with those lines, but we have an agreement with Potomac Edison that they will allow us to use the poles for this year. The reefs themselves are not in the best of shape, and they went up today, the ones that are working, I suppose.
Well, some of them partially, and
Well, it looks nice.
They look
Looks
nice, yes.
Looks a whole lot better than it did, and I'm so pleased that we were able to get them up. But it brings to mind that those reefs are probably 20 years old or better, and we probably need to establish a Christmas decorations committee to examine what we do with our next set of decorations. So I would like to spend some time in the next few weeks selecting some folks. You know anybody that wants to volunteer or participate in that committee, just let me know. But I have some people in mind, but the more the merrier, I suppose. Let me have your input. So we'll need to convene this committee shortly after the first of the year with plans to have the work done by at least August. So and then we can decide what's next. We're not sure about the ability to use the poles in the future, so that's one of the things we're going to have to
that's
address.
definitely no.
Definitely no. All right. Well, that's
One issue
that's
solved.
the answer now. But we'll wait and see what the committee comes up with. All right, anyway, the other question has to do with the nativity scene. You know, the nativity scene was approved by council last month, and there's been some question about whether we prohibited it or not. And at issue is that Catherine and her group submitted the application in a timely fashion. We were ready to go. I assumed that we were ready to go. I'll put it that way. The issue stemmed from the sponsor sign that was included in the application. We had a request that a sponsor sign be listed. Well, the sponsor sign was listed, but when it came back, it had other things besides the sponsors on it. Things like websites and Bible verses and Constitution verses. And council just felt that we should insist that we approve the sponsor sign as it was presented. And as of today, that's the way it stands. So the nativity scene could be relocated anytime anybody wants to move forward and do that. I understand that it's been placed at another location, but that's the issue. That's the sole and entire issue on the nativity scene. I know there's a lot of misinformation that has been published regarding that, and that the only issue is the sponsor sign was edited to conform with what council approved last month. And I guess the first order of business will be the review of the minutes for November 8th and November the 13th meetings. Anyone have any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, on the 8th, it says council members stated that there were no conflicts of interest, and then that happened again on the 13th. But this is the meeting where the council adopted a procedure that put the planning commission in the way of all variances. So a person that needed to go for a variance has to, instead of having a zoning appeal at the Board of Zoning Appeals, now has to go before the planning commission. I raised in these minutes that I thought it was a conflict of interest for Mr. Wantz to vote on this because it potentially could cause additional meetings, but having considered it even further, it certainly increases the power of planning commission members if they have the right and the ability to add or influence a permit before a person gets into having appeal. So I think the minutes should reflect that Commissioner Wantz should have recused himself on these minutes because he's personally aggrandized through new power and also potentially
Can I get a legal
compensation.
opinion on that? Is there any conflict of interest there, Jay?
I said that last meeting when this was brought up, that there is no conflict because the state law requires one of your group to be on the planning commission as an ex officio member. It's required. So therefore, whoever the person is, that happens to be Councilman Wantz at this point in time, is required as part of his duties as a council person to serve on that board. It is not a personal gain. It's a part of his official duties. So it's not a conflict of interest.
All right, I just wanted you to restate that.
Well, I certainly disagree with that legal advice.
Anything else, Don?
That's bad legal advice. If I were to bring forth a policy that would allow me to influence the placement
heard
of
from our
parks as a
lawyer that there's
representative
no
to the
problem.
Parks and Recreation, I think that the city attorney gives us bad advice a lot of times, but tonight is particularly bad advice
Certainly
because the
entitled to
person
that
is
opinion,
given.
but we've got to respect that opinion because he's the only city lawyer we
I
got.
just don't agree with the opinion. It's a conflict of interest for you to vote on something that gives you more power.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, anything else regarding the minutes?
On Monday, I'll make a motion to reflect my objections to the conflict of interest that wasn't declared.
Okay, anybody else have any comments regarding the minutes?
I'm just going to go on record very briefly here and say thank you to our attorney for sound and good legal advice.
Okay, well, they'll be up for approval
Best money
on
can buy.
Monday night. I'd like to now open a public hearing for ordinance 16-2017. You'll recall, this is the ordinance that will govern regulated structures, a zoning code amendment. And those regulated structures, of course, are the small cell towers in particular, but I think we're using the term to say above-ground infrastructure. So anybody have any questions on this from the public? Anybody that'd like to comment on ordinance 16-2017? All right, hearing nothing, I will hold that public hearing open for a few more minutes in case someone comes in late.
Well,
and
I'd like
wants
to ask a
speak.
question before you move off of this item of 16
This part is for the public.
of 2017.
Don,
Your moments later.
we'll get a chance to talk this later, but this time
Well,
is
just
the-
because
for
I
the
get
public
elected to the city
speak.
council doesn't mean I'm not a citizen of the Taneytown anymore. I can't speak at a public
Well,
hearing.
Don, it's later in the agenda. You'll have your chance to speak, but right now, this is for the public.
I stand by what I say.
All right, well, you seem confused about it, but
I'm
anyhow,
not confused about it.
well, you've confused me then, because you have a chance to speak later in the agenda.
I don't give up my right to be a citizen just because I sit on the council.
Well, anytime you
During the
want to
public
return to
comment
the,
period, everyone that has a comment can make a comment.
status of a regular old Taneytown citizen, you can resign, but until that time, you're a councilman, and that means that you have a special responsibility to the rest of the citizens in the town to allow them to speak at a public hearing without
Well, you
your
didn't have
input.
any other comments, though, you gave a time and nobody had any comments, and I wanted to make a comment.
All right,
You
well,
were
we're
wrong.
moving on now, and we come to the part of the program where we ask the public if they have any comments pertaining to non-agenda items. Does anybody have any? Gary?
I'm Ferry Flickinger, 12 Banker Terrace, Taneytown. I would like to invite everyone to come to the Holiday of Trees, Wreaths, and Centerpieces at the NWSB Bank. It's open from now until December 16th during banking hours. And the closing ceremonies are next Saturday, December 16th at approximately 11:30.
Thank you very much. I'll make sure I'm there. Anyone else care to say anything?
Hello, Catherine Adelaide, 9 Cortlandt Street. I just wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and
Merry Christmas.
I hope the council would do a moment of silence at the end at some point to remember all victims of violence this past year. There were 317 mass shootings in the United States this past year, but especially what's close to my heart were the 26 victims that were massacred in Texas, and that was related to domestic violence. I know what it's like to have to go through holidays when you lose a family member. My only brother was killed by a drunk driver many years ago, but I don't have any of those situations going on now, and it's a very happy holiday season for me, but I always do try to remember that many people will be going through their first set of holidays having lost family members. And so I hope the council would just take a moment and do a moment of silence to remember the victims. I just found out really about the 5 people that died in that terrible accident in New Windsor. So just have a happy holiday and remember those who are less fortunate. Thank you.
I think that's appropriate. Let's pause for a moment of silence to remember all the tragedies that this tired old world has experienced this past year, and pray for a better year next year. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, anyone else like to say a word before we get into the agenda? Robin?
I thought perhaps I missed the opportunity, but I just wanted to say that I was disappointed. Robin Fraser, Bentley Street, Taneytown. That when a gift was offered from the Ladies Republican Club and the Tri-District Republican Club from the American Nativity Scene, that it was denied by the mayor and council, and that we really were just trying to be a blessing to remind people that Jesus is the reason for the season, and as the American Nativity Scene folks say, if you go to their website, to keep Christ in Christmas. And we thought we were doing everything we could to bend over backwards to be cooperative, even with the new application, which we didn't really think we had to do.
Robin, I think you missed my remarks that I made at the beginning of the session. I just stated the facts surrounding the matter, that the only thing standing in the way between the nativity scene at the police station and where it is right now is the fact that the sponsor sign was not in compliance with what the council had approved. And once that sponsor sign is in compliance with what the council has approved, you can reconstruct it at the police station. There's no impediment, nothing standing behind it. Everything that was approved last month stands in effect right now, and
That's
you're
an
perfectly
error.
willing to relocate it if you want to.
That's not right.
Okay, well, that's all right, except that the idea is that the nativity scene will be included in the Taneytown celebration at the Christmas tree lighting, again, to remind the people who gathered that Jesus is the reason for the season. And from the very beginning, the city manager denied our ability to be present at the police station on the night of the tree lighting, which again was really kind of rejecting the whole thing.
It was my opinion that extra clutter at that site on Christmas tree lighting night really could pose a safety factor. It just seems like that I just felt that the nativity scene coming after the celebration when the crowds were gone would be a better way to do it. Now you'll notice in my remarks at the Christmas tree lighting that I called people's attention to the fact that the nativity scene was supposed to be here, and I encouraged people to come back. In fact, I even ended my speech with a quote from Isaiah that you had suggested. So I tried to accommodate that the best we could, but I had to respect council's order, council's direction in regard to the proper display of the sponsor sign, and that's the whole issue. That's the only thing that's standing in the way of the nativity scene being at the police station versus where it is now. So.
Yeah, well, the whole thing was a runaround is what it really was, because we were denied the ability to be there on the night of the Christmas tree lighting. I wouldn't call the nativity set clutter. And then how the council even voted on it, I don't know. I'm not sure how that occurred. But the whole thing really, I think, was a runaround. And I don't know why anyone would be opposed, especially you all who said what good Christians you were, to having a verse, Isaiah 9:6, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace." I don't know why anyone would be, that is so appropriate to go along with the nativity scene, and then also to quote the First Amendment, which gives everyone the right to have the freedom of speech to be there. I don't know why you didn't receive our blessing like we wanted to be, and it's that once again you just determined to give us a runaround instead of let us do something nice for the town.
Appearing
So
at the
I'm sorry
nativity
that
scene
that's the way you are.
Reading Bible verses all day long if they want to. But the council approved the sponsor sign in a certain structure, and when it was presented to us, it was it deviated from that structure. That's why it was turned down.
All it said was to identify the sponsor. It didn't say only. It didn't say you couldn't put it,
Well, there's no
what
point in
color the sign
arguing
had to
with
be
it.
or any other
I-
instructions. And we did what we thought was appropriate. And again, we're sorry that you denied our freedom of speech.
The only point I'm trying to make is that if you want to move the nativity scene to the police station, all you got to do is change the sponsor sign, and it's a done deal.
All we have to
It's
do,
on Henry's desk waiting for approval.
so you have denied the right of us to write a Bible verse and to quote the First Amendment on our sponsor sign. Is that correct?
I didn't deny anything. I simply said that the application required a sponsor sign that listed the sponsors, period. Nothing else. No political
That's not what it
statements,
said.
no religious statements, no any kind of statements, just the sponsors.
Well, that was not clear on your application.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. It says here in the minutes on the second page, it says a motion by Frazier to amend the motion for the policy and include the applicant died for lack of second. So the fact is you did not approve it at the meeting. My motion to approve the applicant that came in early October, early November, was not approved at the last meeting. You said it
Of course
was
not.
approved.
No,
November the
it's waiting for-
13th.
Didn't you just hear what I said?
No,
It's waiting for
I
approval
did-
upon correction of the sponsor sign. It's waiting for approval pending the correction
There
of the
was
sponsor
no
sign.
approval
Six
already.
That's all I gotta do. Correct the sponsor sign, it gets approved.
I just wanted to correct the facts, that the minutes reflect what happened.
All right,
It's a died
anyone
for lack of
else from the
second.
community like
to
to speak
approve
on
this
non-agenda
application.
items?
Mayor, I'd actually like to respond very briefly to this, if I may. All right. Last month when we were discussing this, not a single person up here had any religious objections to this whatsoever. As a matter of fact, some like myself, I said it last month, I'll say it again tonight, right? I'm Christian, specifically Catholic. I'm humbled and honored to be able to say that Christ is my Savior. I think nativities are a wonderful and beautiful thing. There's a problem when they become political, though. The whole point of what we were trying to do was to allow people to put up holiday displays with no political aspect whatsoever. The concern with the nativity here there was going to be a link on the sponsor sign to a politically charged website. That was problematic. The reason for the season is Christ, not politics. It's about faith, it's about love, it's about God, it's about Christ. It has nothing to do with politics.
Joe, that's just really wrong.
That's,
But
Robin,
Joe,
you've had-
first
you've
of
had
all-
your
We
say.
agreed to remove we agreed to move what you said. The point of contention, it's not politics to put a quote from the Bible,
I'm not talking about that.
but
The
that's
vote
what's.
to approve the
that's what's holding it
implementation of the
up.
request died for 3-1. So Councilman Bigliotti, Bradley Wentz voted
Let's,
against this policy.
Let's
So to
move
say we all
on.
agreed is not
That's
true.
not fair for him to be able to say something that's false like that. A website is a perfectly good way to identify a sponsor. We thought, especially for the American nativity scene, it would be good for people to be able to go there and read it. Okay?
But
If
we
you wanted to
agreed-
if you want to be offended by some other website, that's your problem. But
I
we
didn't say anything
agreed
about being
to take
personally
the websites
Enough.
off. We
Enough.
agreed to take the
Please
websites
end
off, and
this
that is not the
discussion.
point of contention.
It's the Bible verse, Joe. Joe, and I was told you voted against the Bible verse, and I'm having trouble believing that. That's all.
There was, what vote?
Joe.
All right.
Well,
We got an email that said
No, I got the email.
the council agreed to deny the application.
yeah, and when was this meeting where you all got together and voted down this application?
All right, I'm
Because I
going
wasn't
to
polled.
move on.
I wasn't
This
polled
issue is-
on a vote
Has
to-
been explained accurately and truthfully, and you know what you got to do if you want to move forward with it. The next thing I'm going to do is ask you one more time if there's anyone else here for the public hearing regarding ordinance 16-2017. If not, I want to close that public hearing at this time. Next, I want to ask council if there's any items on the agenda that may pose a conflict of interest tonight.
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
All right. On Monday night, we have adoption of ordinance 16-2017. That's the one we just discussed or had open for discussion. Amendment to the zoning code and regulated structures. Anybody have any questions on that? Now, this is the time you can speak, Don, about this.
If you look at this ordinance, 16, 2017, most of the language in here is not changed. It says on page 2 at the top, new language is underlined and italicized, and deleted language is struck through. So the phrase, "except those regulations in other areas of the city code of Taneytown, including but not limited to Chapter 94 and Chapter 181." Could we get the city attorney to tell us a little bit more about what that means? What are the exceptions in Chapter 94 and 181 before we leave this topic? Would that be all right with you, Mr. Mayor?
Jay, do you have any comment regarding the question?
Chapter 94 is the chapter we talked about that has yet to be adopted. It's a placeholder, and you are going to adopt regulations that deal with small cell structures. You're not going to call them that. It's going to be akin to Chapter 93, which is the cable TV regulations. So it's going to have the specific regulations. That's the one that we are working with MML and the other municipalities to craft. So that is what would apply. The second one, Chapter 181, is your site plan ordinance. So it's anything that would require a site plan review would also be applied. So in total, when you look at the new italics language, it is saying that structures, which are usually exempt from zoning, are not exempt from zoning if they fall into Chapter 94 or if they are covered under the site plan regulation.
Thank you.
Which are to be announced.
Just Chapter 94.
94 is not with us yet, okay?
Anything else, Tom?
I just wanted to clarify that because
Okay.
I had a hunch that if we pass this on Monday, we're passing an exception on a code that doesn't exist yet. I had a hunch, but I wanted to verify that.
Okay. Anyone else?
I guess just a question, and maybe this alludes to some of the concern that I think you might have. Let's say, for example, right, as a state of argument, that we choose not to pass Chapter 94, the resolution that contains Chapter 94 when we come to that. Does that simply require that we go back and amend this to exclude, or?
No, it would just be vacant.
Okay.
There, I mean, so if you came through here and you said, I mean, I know we lose reasonability here, but let's be reasonable, and you read this and say, okay, anything with a fixed location and ground is exempt from this except for fences, power, gas, sewage, except those in Chapter 94, and there's no Chapter 94, then there's no exception.
Thank you.
All right, anybody have any questions on Resolution 2017-17, which is the water allocation that we usually handle each month? Anybody have any questions there? Hearing none, we move to the city manager's report. Henry, what do you have for us this month?
Well, a couple of things. We're still reorganizing the capital projects into a 6-year position. And the capital equipment, we're doing the same thing with that. The visit to Tony Stairs is, I'm arranging a date, and I have contacted Tony Stairs. They have not yet gotten back, so I need to do another call to them. And I guess this is an announcement that we have a new treasurer, and she starts on 12/18, and her name is Barry Avalone. She works currently for, she's
Harper's Ferry.
Harper's Ferry, that's right. The municipality down there. And that's really all I have.
Lives in Frederick.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know he needed that detail.
Any questions for Henry? Any questions anybody have on the department reports? Department reports. All right, how about the legal report? Jay, what do you have for us?
2 items of update. The first is Meads Crossing is finally ready to record and do everything they've said they've been going to do. They finally got the public works agreement hammered out with us, and you know we talked about those changes probably 4 months ago, or three or 4 months ago. But they were all done and then sent to them, and they were waiting to coordinate the recording of all the things they had to do with the county and with the town. So that is now going to happen this month. They are going to do a settlement, obviously, with their loan, and they had targeted that for next week. And as soon as they settle on that, then they have to do the recording. So that's positive news, because we've been talking about this for a long time, which means they'll be beginning the site work shortly thereafter if the winter cooperates to do grading, which will be the first thing, and move on from there. So it's been a long time coming, so we're there with them. The second item deals with the small cell antenna issue, because that is on everybody's radar across the state, across the nation. And so, you know, I'm participating with MML on how to deal with twofold, how to deal with the legislation that might be introduced at the state level, and then how to deal with local regulations. The latest municipal government or local government that adopted a quasi Chapter 94 type of issue is Harford County. So they passed one. We are still working on that. You know, it's a couple hundred pages long, and a lot of it doesn't apply to what we're trying to do. So CDM is taking the lead on that, our engineer, so that we can make sure that what we're dealing with is actually going to work here. And the issues are like numbers related, things an engineer would look at, like how high, how far away, how much does it weigh, how do you design it, those types of things. Those are the specs that need to be in a Chapter 94 that they're working on. So we're moving ahead on that. However, you have to realize, and I'm sure the mayor can talk about the legislative committee's aspect from MML, is that the industry, so the small cell tower people that do this stuff, has introduced their ideas. It's not legislation, but their ideas. And in their goals section, so they say this legislation has these goals. And the first goal is to exempt itself from local regulation. Okay, so realize what we're dealing with here is they would like to exempt themselves from local regulation. And why is that important to us? Well, the hypothetical that is kind of real, I mean, it's not going to happen, is The proposal that came to the city a year ago for a small cell tower that was 200 feet high and sat out in the middle in front of the monument sign for Antrim. Okay, so you know at that corner, and it looked like a big flagpole, just a big bare pole 200 feet high. If the industry is successful in stopping local regulation, that could happen. And that's what this is all about, is trying to make sure that things like that happen through the proper process so that the public knows, the private property owners know, and it's going to be a developing subject. And so I guess that's what the issue is that when we get Chapter 94 involved, when you adopt these, you may be coming back 6 months later and doing a tune-up on it based on what happens at the legislature. This is the ongoing type thing. So it's a lot of work involved. And I'm sure when the mayor gives his report, he can talk about the priorities, but MML's on this. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Questions, sir? Jay?
I think the one thing that might be missed on the MML discussions and maybe in the report we just got was that my cell phone bill's high enough already. And we enact a lot of regulations that include taxation in them, that if you permit something, there's going to be fees involved. And there's a lot of the discussion was about how big you can make the fees. So that just runs up our cell phone bills. We have terrible cell phone coverage on the way to Littlestown, terrible cell phone coverage. It's because of people, not in my backyard type people, that won't let us build enough little boosters and towers in order to be able to get cell phone towers. So when this finally comes out, I want you to keep in mind, fellow council persons, that it is a taxing piece of legislation as well.
Anyone else have any comments for Jay? Okay, let's move along into new business, monthly financial report. Anybody have any comments regarding the monthly financial report?
Yes, sir.
Hearing none, how about the accounts payable? Anybody have any comments regarding the accounts payable? Both those items will be up for approval on Monday night. All right, the next item is public comment pertaining to agenda items. Does anyone have any comment regarding any item that appeared on the agenda tonight? Well, hearing none, my next question is, do I have a motion for adjournment?
I so move we adjourn.
I'll second.
Point of order, don't we need to close the public hearing on?
Closed.
He did.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
But I'll second Councilman Frazier's motion.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. So carried. Thank you, folks. See you Monday.
See where to go.
And you told